right, welcome to Computational Combat. We're looking at mixed martial arts through the eyes of a betting algorithm. I'm Dylan Grayson, joined by the brains of the operation, Johnny Koppelman, and occasionally frozen Connor Protter. How's it going? All right, so this week we are going to quickly look back at the results from the betting algorithm for UFC 257, and then we're going to jump into this upcoming card for this Saturday, which is Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov back in Vegas, which means good news for you, Connor, no crowd.
Nice, except I think there are two people in the crowd, right? Didn't they put out a...
That's for the next pay-per-view, yes. They have some sort of deal where if you win a sweepstakes, they will put you into quarantine and get you to be the lone two fans in the Apex, which is just something. All right.
I think you also have to be vaccinated beforehand, right?
I don't think so. I think it's just testing in quarantine. I don't know.
Okay.
Regardless, Johnny, not last week, the last card, UFC 257. How did we do?
It was a great card. We came out with 70% profit percentage. So on our bet, we received profits up to 70% of what we bet. I'll simplify that because I can't even do it in my head sometimes. So if you bet $100, you profited $70.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Can we break it down?
Yes.
Fight by fight.
Yep, I have them all here. So the first fight of the night, geez, I'm going to have to pronounce all these.
I can go through the fights with the names.
Go through the fights, and then I'll say what happened.
Okay. So Albazi versus Zhumagulov.
Mm-hmm. We bet on Zhumagulov. I believe that was a value, but I don't fully remember if they're value or not. So for this one, I'm just going to tell you what I bet on, and you'll just have to believe me. So Zhumagulov, we bet on him, and that lost.
Right. So that one, actually, I remember on the podcast, we didn't discuss it, but then the betting lines changed, and I ended up texting you afterwards that we had played.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, value barely opened up on this fight. So it was a small value play.
All right. Evloev versus Lentz.
So we had Nick Lentz as a 27% underdog, or a chance to win. Huge underdog.
Yeah. But
the books had him even more. So obviously it made a great value play on him. He lost, but I thought it was a great value play after watching the fight.
Yeah, it was way closer than it should have been. Marcin Prokhnio versus Khalil Roundtree.
Oh, right. Yes. We put money on I can't say the name.
Prokhnio.
We put money on Prokhnio. We put a good amount on Prokhnio, actually, because I believe we had him as a slight underdog. We had this as a close fight, but the books had him as like a humongous underdog. So we got a lot of value there because it was a plus 375 fighter, and we won big on that one.
Yeah, I didn't like that bet, but once again, the algorithm is smarter than me. Pena versus McMahon.
Oh, yeah. This was a huge one. This was one of the ones that we needed to come through. We had Pena as the favorite, and I believe the books had her as an underdog. Don't quote me on that. Or they at least had her as a less favorite than us. And she won, which was huge. That was our biggest play of the night. Most money in that one.
Tavares versus Carlos Jr.
We had on Carlos Jr. I actually think we had him as a slight favorite. He lost though.
Sarukian versus Frivola. This fight changed after the podcast, so we didn't discuss it, but were there any bets placed?
No, this fight. Wait, was this fight announced after the podcast?
Sarukian and Frivola's opponents both pulled out.
That's right. So Frivola, we had as a large underdog, but the books had him as an even larger one. So it was another value play, which I loved while watching the fight. The books had him as a plus 625. We had him as like a plus 200, and he looked more like a plus 400, 300. So it was great value. He lost, but he definitely wasn't a plus 625.
Rodriguez versus Hibas.
We had Rodriguez as the favorite, and I believe she was an underdog online. Yeah, she was a huge underdog online, actually. So we capitalized big on that one.
Muradov versus Sanchez.
Oh, yes. We had money on Andrew Sanchez. He was an underdog in the books. We had him as a slight favorite, I believe. He lost.
Calderwood versus I.
We had Calderwood as the favorite, but it was a close fight. We had I as like a 51% favorite, essentially 50-50. So that was the smallest value bet of the night. It was 0.13%. She lost.
Okay, Chandler versus Hooker, we didn't bet on because it was Chandler's debut, but very impressive. And then, of course, the big one, Dustin Poirier knocking out Conor McGregor. You called it. The algorithm called it.
Yeah,
I didn't believe you. So,
that was a huge one. He was an algorithm favorite, a book large underdog for what it was. I also thought he would win, and he won. So that was huge.
awesome. So, with that, we're going to move on to discussing the upcoming card. Some changes that happened today. Ode Osborne was supposed to face someone making their UFC debut, whose name escapes me at the moment. That guy pulled out, and in is Jerome Rivera. And then the other thing that happened today with this card, Marion Renault was supposed to face Macy Chiasson, but Renault got COVID. She announced it on her Instagram. The fight is moved to February 27th. She is currently asymptomatic. Hopefully she remains asymptomatic. But one thing worth noting is that she at least trains some of the time at the same gym as Mike Rodriguez, who is also on this card. So it'll be interesting to see if he stays in, if he tests positive, obviously hoping that none of that happens. But, this is the reality of the sport right now. It's difficult for fighters to be COVID safe while training for fights. And Renault was obviously posting photos in the gym maskless, because what else do you do? But now she's tested positive, and hopefully her teammates are all right. So
I'm going to end that by saying I hope her teammates tested positive too. And I was going to be like, whoa.
no, Jesus. No, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Hopefully, I don't even want to say hopefully a quick recovery. Hopefully she's never symptomatic. Hopefully she's okay and just has to quarantine for the sake of others. But moving on to the actual card, starting at featherweight, Ode Osborne versus Jerome Rivera, who is not related, as Connor tricked me with a few weeks back. Both of these guys have some cans on their record. Some guys that they fought relatively late into their careers with minus 500 records. And I think that a loss to Tyson Nam from Jerome Rivera is worse than a loss to Brian Kelleher on Ode Osborne's side. I don't have all that much to say, but based on that, I'm thinking Ode Osborne is going to take this. Connor?
Yeah, I agree. Losing to Francisco Figueiredo and losing my train of thought as well. Yeah, to Tyson Nam. Those are not great people to lose to. And even though I think Brian Kelleher is a little underrated, I have a lot of respect for that dude. You and I have gotten to watch him fight live a couple times now, I think. I really like Brian Kelleher. So by proxy, I like the dude who lost to him more.
Fair enough. Johnny, what is the algorithm?
You gotta love good old MMA math. The algorithm has Ode Osborne as a 66.7% favorite. And it's putting, due to the books also having Ode Osborne as a favorite, us having him as a little more of a slight favorite, thus there's value. We're putting 0.16% on him, or 16 cents to your $100.
Yeah, so another small bet, but that is fine early on in the card. Staying at featherweight, Yusuf Zalal versus Sung Woo Choi. I think between the two of these guys, Choi's win is the less impressive one. Yusuf Zalal's only loss in the UFC is to Ilia Topuria, who is a very good prospect. So not knowing all that much about them individually, just going off of the MMA math here, I like Yusuf Zalal. Connor?
Saying not very impressive is the most polite way to describe Suman Mokhtarian fighting in the UFC.
Go ahead. I had actually written something. The Mokhtarian brothers are can crushers to the extreme.
I don't think either of them are in the UFC anymore, right? I think that the entirety of the Australian top team, the two Mokhtarians and then Nadia Qasim, I'm pretty sure they all got cut.
Regardless of what it is, yeah, they are can crushers.
Yeah, I don't really think that speaks well for Choi as a fighter. There's nothing wrong with losing to Evloev. There's nothing wrong with losing to Gavin Tucker. But that kind of just tells us how good you aren't. Doesn't really tell us how good you are. So similarly, I think Yusuf Zalal has a much higher ceiling in the sport.
And what does the algorithm say?
It disagrees with both of you. It has a close fight, but has Sung Woo Choi at a 54% favorite. I really like the algorithm when comparing two relatively less weathered guys in the UFC. So I like that. And Sung Woo Choi is an extreme underdog on the book. So this is a pretty big value play. It's putting 1.56% of the fund on Sung Woo Choi or $1.56 to your $100. So cross fingers on that one.
I mean, as far as the algorithm goes, that is a big bet. I know when we talk about it like that, it sounds small.
Yeah.
But just based on what the algorithm tends to churn out, that is a big bet. And I personally don't like it. I don't see him beating Yusuf Salal. But hey, I've been proven wrong before. Moving on to flyweight, Molly McCann versus Lara Procopio. The only thing I really have to say here is that McCann at least has wins in the UFC. I think McCann should be able to implement some wrestling to get the win here. Nothing more from me on that.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I agree. Molly McCann is like, she's not the best fighter. Her nickname is Meatball. She's not the most athletic fighter. But like, she's put in a lot of work on improving her technique. And while she's not going to beat Valentina Shevchenko, like, she's probably very confidently going to beat Lara Procopio.
And what does the algorithm say?
It agrees with both of you. It has Molly McCann as a 67% favorite. The books also have Molly McCann as a favorite, but not that large. So there's value here. It put a small 78 cents or 70.78% on Molly McCann. And yeah, again, these percentages might seem small, but considering the fund size is large, it's actually a good amount of money. So
right. So the betting algorithm works as like a system where you're betting over time and it's going to accrue money and keep
yes.
Betting. Whereas if you are going out and you're like, okay, I have $10 to throw tonight, sticking to these percentages is going to be impossible. But just
exactly
the best way to gauge it is that compared to the other bets, the size of an individual bet will explain to you how confident the algorithm is.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, 78 cents there, that's not that small considering what the algorithm does.
Yeah, you're very right. Yeah.
Moving on to bantamweight, Carol Rosa versus Jocelyn Edwards. Rosa's 2 UFC wins are against Procopio and Melo. So Procopio, who we just spoke about and aren't too impressed by, and Vanessa Melo, who barely kept her UFC career alive with a very bad win a few weeks back. Jocelyn Edwards looked really good in her debut against Wu Yanan. I'm taking Jocelyn Edwards here. I think she's legit.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the Melo that we're talking about is not Carmelo Anthony. It's a fighter with the last name Melo. That was a really dumb joke, and I'm already kicking myself for it. On the topic, don't shake your head at me like that, Johnny.
Hey, I will have you know, you'll be embarrassed by the dozens of people that watch this.
That's a good point.
Oh, no one's dozens now.
Got out verdict.
Yeah, so in this fight, I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, Procopio and Melo are not the best wins, but honestly, on the other hand, neither is Wu Yanan, or Yanan Wu, as apparently Tapology is calling her. I don't know. I don't really feel great about either of this. Truthfully, I haven't actually seen the last few fights of Jocelyn Edwards' career. So I don't really feel that qualified to speak on it, but I'm going to anyway because I can. I will take Carol Rosa on this one just for the interest of the split.
Interesting indeed. Johnny?
So for some reason, when I was running this, I didn't see that fight. So just continue on and we'll come back to this because I didn't run this fight.
Well, I will just say that honestly, I feel like beating Wu Yanan is more impressive than anything that Carol Rosa has done in the UFC. But I mean, we will see. The next fight is a catchweight bout at 160 pounds. Justin James versus Devontae Smith. James was one of the pandemic pickups. They brought him in to fill out a card and he knocked out Frank Camacho, which was quite surprising. But since then, he's lost 2. On the other hand, Devontae Smith was 2-0 in the UFC, and then he got knocked out by Kama Worthy. Tough one to call here, but I feel like Devontae Smith is going to take the win. I feel like both James' knockout win and Smith's knockout loss were kind of flukish. Smith is long and rangy, and he has knockout power, so I like him here.
Yeah, you know, it's funny when you said that this was a pandemic, that he was a pandemic pickup. I had a brief moment of like, no, he wasn't. That Camacho fight was so long ago, and then I looked and I was like, oh God, it's just time is just passing differently right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't really think there's anything great out of. I mean, again, Gavin Tucker and Gabriel Benitez are both great fighters. But when you've dropped 2 straight to them while knocking out Frank Camacho, I think that doesn't really speak highly of you comparatively to Devontae Smith, who, well, his wins aren't over the most impressive competition. Like, objectively, Frank Camacho is a better win than any of those, but like having a more consistent streak and then losing to a heavy hitter like Kamaworthy, there's no shame in that. Maybe he gets knocked out by Justin James, which maybe that happens, but I think if I had to pick like out of 10, I'd take Devontae Smith more times than not. Only other thing I wanted to mention is that Justin James's nickname is Guitar Hero on Tapology, and I just think that's neat.
All right, Johnny, do we have stats for this one?
Again, I don't know what happened. I did this kind of early. Was this fight announced recently, or was this been on there for a while?
As far as I know, this one's been there.
Really? That's the problem.
Organized. That's how you describe this podcast. We are well-organized people who certainly don't go about our daily lives doing our other stuff and then randomly Zoom call each other to make this.
No, I quit my day job to do this podcast.
Oh yeah, that's great. How's that working for you, considering the $0 and 0 cents of a budget we have?
I mean, if you listen to the bets, I mean, maybe it would have went well.
Yeah.
There's the budget.
All right. So are we continuing to move on until we come back to these two?
Yeah, move on, because I'm gonna have to run the numbers on them.
All right, crunch those numbers faster. We are back at featherweight for Timur Valiev versus Martin Day. Valiev's only UFC loss, his only UFC fight was a no contest, which is bullshit because he got knocked out by Trevin Jones, and then Jones tested positive for marijuana. Which, by the way, now with the new rule changes, isn't even something that would overturn a fight. So, what?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, regardless, so let's be real. Timur Valiev's only UFC fight was a knockout loss. Meanwhile, Martin Day is on a 3-fight skid in the UFC and looking for his first win in the octagon. I don't know. Valiev at least has fights in PFL and WSOF, and Trevin Jones seems like a name that is on the up and up. So I think I'm going to take him over Day, who's on a 3-fight skid, but this isn't a particularly like impressive fight.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I think that the knockout loss was not great, but I have the sense that he's at least fringe UFC caliber. Meanwhile, Martin Day, it's funny actually, in addition to the 3-fight skid that he's on right now, if you go all the way to his very first loss to Noeline Hernandez actually fought in the UFC and lost to Chito Vera. I don't think Martin Day is going to be up there for much longer. I think if he loses this fight, he's definitely going to get cut. I'm going to take the guy with momentum on his side.
Fair enough.
In addition to the fact that Timur Valiev is a good fighter, I think.
Johnny, do we have this one?
No. Martin Day versus who?
Timur Valiev.
I swear to you, these fights got added on recently. There was not these many preliminary fights when I ran this.
I swear to you, they did not.
Are you sure? I can promise you.
I swear to you, they have been there. So, what
Skip
is
it.
the fight that you have stats for? Because I don't know what's going on.
I have stats for anyone that's fought in the UFC. I just
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, what is the next fight that you have crunched the numbers for already?
Mike Rodriguez.
Okay, so that's the next one.
Yes.
So, okay. Have you gotten back to any of the previous ones that we discussed?
Yeah. So, due to internal, like, I don't know how to explain this in layman's. Due to internal conflicts of some of these fighters, they actually can't be ran because they fought their first fights after I ran. I have to essentially, I categorize fighters after they fight, and I have to run that after a fighter's fought for the first time. I haven't ran that yet because I just haven't ran that yet. So some of these fighters I fought for the first time recently, I don't have that information on, so I can't run predictions on, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So just, yeah, those
Okay.
fights.
Okay. So we got nothing for James versus Smith. We got nothing for Valiev versus Day either.
Yes, nothing for them.
Okay. Moving on to light heavyweight, Mike Rodriguez versus Danilo Marquez. So Marquez is 1-0 in the UFC. But Rodriguez realistically is 3-2, not 2-3 in the UFC. This was one of the most egregious referee mistakes I've ever seen. He had totally knocked out Ed Herman with a body shot, and the referee called it a low blow, and the replays showed that it was a body shot. And Ed Herman knew it was a body shot because he got punched in the liver or kicked in the liver. But Herman was just like, yeah, it was a nut shot, took time to rest. They restarted the fight, and then Herman won with a Kimura, which is bullshit.
You are missing details. He didn't just win with the Kimura. He won with the Kimura where he was torquing himself by putting his toes into the cage to give himself extra leverage.
Lovely. So Mike Rodriguez lost.
As Dominic Cruz or Michael Bisping would call it, these are veteran moves.
Oh yeah. So Rodriguez, I like him here, and I think he gets his redemption, and I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, except for me being the one to say it. I agree. Like Mike Rodriguez ostensibly should have been winning those fights. I think Ed Herman, a fighter who he should have beaten, is a better fighter than the type of people that Danilo Marquez is fighting. I'm going to take Mike Rodriguez.
Yeah, so the algorithm agrees with both of you. It has Mike Rodriguez as a 53% favorite. The books have him as a way higher favorite, and they have Marquez as a pretty decent underdog. So there's value on Marquez with a 0.78% play or 78 cents to your $100.
All right, and then moving on to featherweights, we have Mike Grundy versus Damian Stasiak. I'm kidding with you, Johnny. I made that one up. That's not a real fight on this card.
I was gonna freak out. I'm like, these fights come out of nowhere. What the hell?
Connor texted me to do that.
That is a Connor move. That's a Connor move right there.
That one I made up. I just clicked through a few fighters on Wikipedia and looked at an old fight somewhere on someone's record. Yeah. Yeah.
Sweating over here.
Yeah. So that's not a fight on this card. That is a fight that happened in Bama in 2015. So
I was actually a little bit worried because when you started saying that, I forgot that I texted that to you, and I was like, shit, I don't know that this fight's happening.
And Mike Grundy is an active UFC fighter. So, all right. The actual next fight at lightweight, Michael Johnson versus Clay Guida. Michael Johnson used to be good, and then in his last 11 fights, he's 3-8. And one of those 3 is a knockout win over Dustin Poirier because this sport is weird. Guida has been bouncing around a bit and is definitely on the tail end of his career as well, but I feel like Michael Johnson has fallen farther faster. And if I know anything about Michael Johnson, I think we're going to see Michael Johnson winning this fight. Oh, he's lost somehow. Oh, that's weird. He was in control the whole time and then he just lost it. Uh-oh. Looks like we have some Wi-Fi issues. Are you guys with me?
I see both of them.
Yeah, you're doing fine. You're the problem.
Okay.
That's sabotaging this whole operation.
All right, let's see if it holds from here. So, Johnson versus Guida. Connor.
Yeah, I feel like this is the type of fight that if you asked me back in like 2015, 2016, probably would have picked Michael Johnson, but I mean, he's coming off of 3 horrible, embarrassing losses. I mean, the Thiago Moises fight, he lights him up the first round. And I was like, wow, it's old Michael Johnson. He's back. And then immediately gets ankle locked in the second round. I was like, oh no, it's Michael Johnson. He never left. Things in this fight should favor Michael Johnson. His takedown defense isn't horrible. He still has knockout power. He still probably has the fastest hands at lightweight. At the same time, like, and I mean, Clay Guida's not doing too well. He's on a 2-fight skid. But like, I can't trust Michael Johnson to do anything. Clay Guida is somehow going to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
All right. The algorithm, please.
The algorithm picks Clay Guida here as a 55% favorite. The books completely disagree with this and disagree with you, Dylan. And they have Clay Guida as the pretty decent underdog, around a plus 175. So this is a pretty big bet on Clay Guida. It has 1.56% or $1.56 to your 100. I personally like this bet because, I mean, props to anyone that steps in the ring, but I would like to see Clay Guida win this fight. I'm not a huge Michael Johnson fan myself. And just quickly looking at their resumes and their last 3 opponents and the strength of the last 3 opponents, I mean, it's a complete mismatch of strength. I would say that whereas it's still embarrassing, Michael Johnson's last 3 fights are against better opponents than Clay Guida's last 3 fights. So I don't think the last 3 thing works here. I know Verdict likes to say, likes to show the wins or losses in their last 3 and stuff like that. And I just don't think that's a good gauge here. But I still think Clay Guida will win.
Yeah,
I mean,
so even though this actually isn't on the main card, Verdict does have it up on their app. So I am going to jump into that. And Verdict, the most popular pick as of the time that I wrote this, which was yesterday, was Michael Johnson by decision. So take that.
There you go.
yeah, like I don't disagree that Michael Johnson can win this. He has all of the tools that he needs to be able to do it. He's just like, he's so horrifically inconsistent. I don't trust him to do it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on to the main card, which is now 1 fight shorter than it was at the start of the day. We are staying at lightweight for an absolute banger. Number 10, Carlos Diego Ferreira versus number 13, Beneil Dariush. Ferreira is on a 6-fight streak, and he's got some really good names in there, but he sat out for a full year. Dariush is on a similarly impressive 5-fight streak. Both these guys have solid knockout power and pretty good grappling. It's kind of tough for me to pick this one, but I feel like Ferreira has a bit of a higher ceiling. What surprised me, though, is that Ferreira is actually 5 years older, which, looking at them, I wouldn't believe that. But I'm sticking with CDF. And Verdict says that Dariush, by decision, is the most likely pick, or the most common pick of the world. Connor?
I love this fight.
Yeah,
I love this fight. I don't know, man. Like, I remember being hype as shit when this was first announced. I don't know if I'm more excited for this or the co-main event. But this is just such a good fight. Like, CDF has literally been in the UFC forever. You can go back and watch him when he had a friggin' mop top when he got knocked out in Dustin Poirier's lightweight debut. He's been around forever. His past couple wins, like Anthony Pettis, okay, but like Rustam Kabalov and Merbek Taisumov, those are great wins to have on anybody's resume. Pretty sure actually, and let me verify this, that he was the one to snap the that disgusting streak that that Merbek Taisumov had for a little bit.
Yeah, he had a 6-fight win streak.
I agree that I think CDF can win more high-ranked matchups than Beneil Dariush, but I actually think I'm going to be taking Dariush in this fight. I love Benny. I think he's a great fighter. Like, I remember back when he got knocked out by Edson Barboza, that like he got like dropped out of the rankings, and he's like literally had just to like scrape his way back up. I have so much respect for that dude. I think he's probably not as good of a grappler, but I think he's just such an aggressive striker that I feel comfortable saying that he can win this fight.
What does
Yeah. I just want to say, and I want to share my screen in a second, I think these are the 2 most underrated fighters in the lightweight division. And the internal stats show it, the resumes show it. It has this is the second closest fight of the night. It has Beneil Dariush as a 51% favorite. The books also have this pretty close. They have Dariush as a plus 100 underdog. So it's going with that, obviously. It is the smallest, second tie for the smallest play of the night with 0.16% or 16 cents to $100. I think Dariush is going to win this. I think he's one of my favorite fighters right now. That spinning like forearm to the jaw knockout is just absurdly cool. But I also want to say that both of their resumes are pretty damn good. They both fought some decent guys, with especially CDF has some really big names that might not be big in like the media, but have like very high internal rankings. So much to in fact, that CDF is ranked internally as like the 4th or 5th lightweight based on internal resume score. And this is because guys like Gaethje might have beat 1 or 2 or 3 like bigger names, so he moved up more, whereas CDF has beaten like a decent amount of lower to mid tier guys. But yeah, I'm really hyped for this fight.
All right, so moving on from that one to what is another fun fight, changed up a little bit. At bantamweight here, Cody Stamann, the 13th ranked bantamweight, versus Askar. So Stamann was supposed to fight Andre Ewell, but Ewell had to pull out, and Askar steps in. If that name sounds familiar, this is not Askar Askarov. That is an entirely different person. And either Connor is being very still or he is frozen, and I can't tell which it is. It appears occasionally frozen Connor Potter was the right intro today.
Yeah, he's frozen on my screen too.
Oh, yeah. So I'll just go through mine and hopefully he pops back up. So Cody Stamann's only UFC losses were to Aljamain Sterling and Jimmy Rivera. Both of those are very good names, and I think both of those have aged decently, if not very, very well. And we briefly lost Connor. Hopefully he'll pop back in. So if almost did it. If Askar pulls through, then he's legit. But I think it's too much too soon to debut against a top 15 opponent at bantamweight. This is a stacked division. So I just think that this is too much to ask of a debuting fighter, but obviously, you're given the call from the UFC, hey, you get a shot in the UFC. Very few people are going to turn that down. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Connor texted that his Wi-Fi dropped. So give us the algorithm in the meantime.
Well, as you know, there's a debuting fighter, so there is no algorithm pick on this one.
Yes, that is true.
But I agree with you, and I really like Cody, so.
All right, so Connor has reconnected to his Wi-Fi and is back. So Stamann versus Askar.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about Askar just because he's such a short notice debut in the UFC. Cody Stamann, I respect the crap out of that dude. In addition to the fact that what is it? His brother died like the week of one of his fights, and he just kind of gritted through. In addition to the fact that I just have infinite amounts of respect for him, he's an incredibly durable wrestler. I think he's one of the better ones in the UFC. He might not have the most powerful takedowns, but he's incredibly determined. Dylan, I have no idea what you said about him while I was gone. But either way, I really like Cody Stamann. I'm rooting for the guy. And you know what they say, never trust a man with two first names. And I assume that Askar is a first name.
Well, it's at least a first name. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of saying basically that he's a good wrestler and that debuting against a top 15 UFC fighter at bantamweight is a very big ask.
Yeah.
Our ask. Thank you. I'll be here all week.
That one was good. I liked that one. I actually like that one.
So obviously no algorithm for that one because Askar is making his debut. Another one that we sadly won't have the algorithm for at flyweight. Number 5, Alejandro Pantoja versus Manel Kape. Holy, I have been waiting for this one for a while. Pantoja's really good. He's legit. Although he is coming off of a loss to Askar Askarov, who is not the same dude we've just been talking about. Entirely different fighter. But Pantoja's still good. He's the number 5th ranked flyweight. Kape is coming off of 3 wins in Ryzen, including a title win over Kai Asakura. I think that as far as bantamweight goes, if you're outside of the UFC, the best thing possible is probably a Ryzen title right now. That division is very good. And it's been over a year since he's fought, but I am ready for this. And I personally think that Kape takes it. Verdict says Pantoja by decision. Oh, which also reminds me, Verdict picked Cody Stamann over Askar as well.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to this fight, I've similarly been looking forward to this for so long. This is the 3rd time they've tried to schedule it since August, I want to say, of last year. Manel Kape, I don't know how you say Cape, whatever it is.
Cape, but that just may be announcers mispronouncing it.
Either way, he is incredibly, incredibly good. I don't think that the people that he's beaten have shown how good he is, considering the 2 of them, or considering that at least one of them is Takeo Izugaki, who is, but winning over Kai Asakura by knockout is we really respect that in this household. Meanwhile, Alejandro Pantoja had that one. It was an amazing fight. It was probably one of the best fights of 2020. Oh God, 2019. That was a long time ago. Against Davison Figueiredo. That fight was insane. But at the same time, he got real badly fucked up in that fight. I'm going to take the newcomer in this one. I wish we had the algo for it, but, is what it is.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Johnny, besides the algorithm?
The only thing I have to say about I want to say something about the Cody Stamann fight really quick.
Yeah.
Going based off of the mindset of exposing high value, I wouldn't be happy doing this because I like Cody, but Askar is coming in at plus 350. And a lot of times what you see is with debut fighters, people just don't get it right. They'll pick the fighter they like. So if I'm a betting man, not too much, but I would throw someone Askar for that positive value outcome. I don't think you put money on Cody. I think the value there is terrible, even if you like him.
I think that logic should probably apply to Manel Cape because casual fans who aren't aware of him might not know who he is. They're like, oh, this guy's the number 5 ranked fighter in the UFC and his opponent is making his debut. I'll bet on Pantoja. But they don't realize that Cape is actually like super legit.
Yeah, Cape is actually not too much of an underdog in that fight. I guess people might be onto that a little, but he still is an underdog. So you're onto something there. That's a good way of betting, you know?
All right, moving up 10 pounds to bantamweight. Number 2, Corey Sandhagen versus number 4, Frankie Edgar. First thing, banger. Again, banger. Sorry, Connor, you're about to be sad. Connor is a big Frankie Edgar fanboy, and the truth is that Frankie Edgar is great, but he is past his prime, and that doesn't mean he's bad. He's still a top 5 fighter at bantamweight. That is incredible. He was lightweight champion, then he dropped down to featherweight, got a title shot. Now he's down at bantamweight, and he's top 5, and he deserves to be top 5. But he is not top 2. Corey Sandhagen, his only recent loss is to Aljamain Sterling, who is now fighting for the title. That aged very well. And Sandhagen got choked out in like a minute 30 by Aljo. And I was like, oh man, I guess, Sandhagen's probably going to drop down the card a little bit. Then he comes back and knocks out Marlon Moraes. And talk about a turnaround. And I think if he wins here, which I do expect him to do, he's next in line for a title shot. I don't know what happens if Aljamain Sterling wins. Are they against making that rematch because the first fight was so quick? I don't know, but Sandhagen went from, oh man, there goes the hype train. It had been derailed. He put it right back on the rails and is moving forward. And I think he's going to be too much for Frankie Edgar.
Connor? Yeah, so the good news is I don't think you'll have to worry about Aljo winning.
That's number
yeah,
one.
So on this fight, I mean, what can be said about Frankie Edgar that hasn't already been said? Like, the dude was one half of the greatest trilogy in all of MMA history. Dylan still hasn't seen it, and everybody should shame him for that. Just because he doesn't really like watching old fights. Bad excuse. Frankie Edgar's a fucking beast. The dude is incredibly durable, although admittedly significantly less so nowadays. He's durable. He has great cardio. The big thing in this fight going against him, besides the fact that he's older and slower, is that his game really relies on being able to both get takedowns and get good boxing combinations going. If his opponent isn't worried about the takedown, like Brian Ortega, or his opponent isn't worried about the striking, like Jose Aldo. I mean, not that Jose Aldo is worried about the wrestling ever, because he's the greatest of all time, or second greatest of all time, depending on the day. Despite that fact, like, he really needs both aspects of his game to work, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get both of them to work against Corey Sandhagen. He's way bigger, he's fast, he has disgusting body punches, his kicks are getting really nice. The one really big thing going for Edgar in this fight, though, is the fact that I almost said Cody Stamann. The fact that Corey Sandhagen has really awful takedown defense, as evidenced by the fight against Aljamain Sterling. He immediately got pushed up against the cage, and well, I guess he didn't get taken down. He just got his neck snatched.
Back taken, but yeah,
that's fair. I don't remember who it was that took him down, but I know he does have really bad takedown defense statistically. So theoretically, Frankie Edgar could just get him down and just hold him, hit him for 3 rounds, and keep it going like that. It pains me to sadness hedge against that happening, so I'm also going to take Sandhagen, but I think there's presumably from the algorithm going to be serious value on Frankie Edgar in this.
Well, see, this is where you started thinking how the algorithm thinks a little bit. The fact that Corey's takedown defense is so poor and Frankie's takedown attempts is so high, it must see value there because it has Frankie Edgar as a 59% favorite. I really like that play from a stat breakdown. It's very good at like at the end of the day, styles make fights. It's like sometimes the better fighter will lose the better fighter will lose because the style wasn't a great matchup. I think this is the case. So I really like this Frankie Edgar play. This is the biggest play on the card and the biggest play we've seen in a while, with a 2.34% on Frankie Edgar, or $2.34, due to the fact that on the books, Frankie Edgar is a plus 330 underdog. I really like this. There's nothing else really to add there besides that. Connor, you should stick with your analytical thinking. I'm telling you, I think you'll be surprised.
So it's
Yeah.
to see the three biggest bets tonight that have been placed, I feel like are all really, really risky. So either in a week's time, I'll be like, oh, Johnny, you've done it again. Or we'll be talking about our first time, going in the red for a week.
Yeah.
It's gone in the red for a week before. It's just that in totality, it's never dropped negative profit over like 200 fights now, or 29 cards.
I pulled up the stats for it. I just want to make a brief note of it. Ironically, where I said that Aljamain Sterling took him down, even though I was wrong, he just snatched his neck from behind. Corey Sandhagen has a 30% takedown defense and has been taken down by every single other opponent in the UFC that wasn't Aljamain Sterling. Wow. He got taken down once by Marlon Moraes. He got taken down 4 times by Rafael Assunção. He got taken down once each by Lineker, Batista, Alcantara, and Arnett. That's not great. I can definitely see why there's value.
Connor, you're starting to think like an algorithm. I also want to say I'm forever thankful for Corey, because we had Corey as a favorite when he fought Marlon Moraes, and he was a huge underdog on the books. And I remember that was a satisfying spinning heel kick for like $300.
I didn't believe you then either. The thing is, Aljamain Sterling, didn't take him down, but I mean, he initiated the wrestling and was able to chain together to get the standing back take, which then ended up with Sandhagen on his side. But
I definitely think that regardless of who wins this fight, this is probably the next shot. This is probably a title eliminator, honestly. Like, regardless of who wins in Aljamain versus Peter Yan, I don't know why I said Aljamain. That was weird. I should have just said Aljo. But regardless of who wins that fight, like, I could definitely see them being like, the last one was like only like 10, 20, 15, whatever seconds. We want to run it back, or be like, oh my God, Edgar going for his 3rd belt. Like, they're going to do it. I really hope Frankie wins. I love Frankie, but I don't know.
Yeah, Verdict has Sandhagen by decision. So I think they're thinking the way that I was looking at, recent fights and outcomes there. But yeah, the takedown defense thing is something that I didn't look into, and hearing it, the argument is solid. Yeah. All right, main event time. We are at heavyweight. The number 5 ranked heavyweight, Alistair Overeem, versus the number 6 ranked Alexander Volkov. This is really tough for me. I feel like either Overeem gets the KO win or he gets knocked out, which is typical Alistair Overeem, the glass cannon, I think that if Volkov is able to keep it at a distance and strike from the outside, he could very well win this. But if he allows Overeem to employ a clinch game, I think Overeem takes it. This is really, really tough for me. I actually don't have a pick written down because I can't really decide here.
On the fence.
Yeah, I'm very much on the fence here. I will say that Verdict has Alistair Overeem by decision as the most common pick right now. So I think I'm just going to probably fall in line with that, but I'm not super confident. Connor?
So I agree with you, Dylan, in that Alistair Overeem will either win or lose. Most likely. I mean, maybe a no contest, maybe a draw. I don't know if I'm feeling fancy.
No, specifically a knockout. I don't.
No, I know. Alistair Overeem is a great glass cannon. So he should have already been the UFC champion by guillotining Stipe Miocic, but he decided to relinquish the belt and just continue going for more fights. I love Alistair Overeem. I mean, he definitely had that hotshot dickhead, like, roid rage period when he was Ubereem. But like, since then, he's been incredibly classy. Like, the dude got absolutely obliterated by Curtis Blades and came back and trained with Curtis because he wanted to learn what he did wrong. That's like been a pattern across his career. He's one of those guys that's like a real, genuine, true mixed martial artist because he just keeps training and picking up new skills. And that's the reason why he's been able to last so long, even though he's getting older, he's getting slower, his chin's getting a little weaker. Volkov looked nice against Walt Harris, but I don't really know how to rate Walt Harris as an opponent. Before everything horrible that happened, he was the guy who would either knock you out immediately or lose a decision. Since then, I don't really know if his head's in the game, as uncomfortable as it is to watch him fight. I think I'm going to take Overeem. I actually feel pretty comfortable picking him. He is one of the absolute best strikers in the UFC. Last time that I looked at the stat leaderboards, I think he actually led the striking accuracy at 77%, if I remember correctly, despite being a heavyweight. The dude is incredibly good at picking his shots. He doesn't always switch stances, but he's comfortable from both. In a fight against another striker, I'm gonna take the kickboxer. I'm gonna take fucking Reem, man. Demolition Man. Let's get that strap.
All right, John.
So the algorithm agrees with both of you. It is Alistair Overeem. This is the second closest fight on the card, with him as a 51% favorite. I don't know if I said it before. Frankie Edgar was a 59.9% favorite, so like 60%. I don't remember if I said that. The books disagree with verdict and you two. The books have Alistair Overeem as a plus 165. He's an underdog. So it's making a play there with the 78%, 0.78% or 78 cents your $100. It seems like that's the mid-range bet for this card. I really like that play as well. I also just want to state, to quantify a Walt Harris win, Walt Harris internally at the time of that fight was one of the worst fighters in heavyweight. So it's not that impressive. Considering Walt Harris's resume, he was one of the worst in the heavyweight division. And then when Volkov beat Walt Harris, he was even worse. So,
Right.
I mean, I think you can just ignore that fight.
Johnny, I would really like you to never remind me about that awful Alistair Overeem
Yeah,
Walt Harris
yeah.
fight. That was that was so bad.
The algorithm had Overeem as the favorite, and because everyone wanted Walt Harris to win so much, Walt Harris was the favorite. So I remember like feeling really guilty about being happy that Overeem won, because I was like, oh, I don't want to root against this guy, but
that was absolutely brutal. It was relatively early into COVID, right?
Yeah.
It was still like lockdown number one, like none of the restrictions had been lifted even slightly yet. He had this comeback story and he almost like got the finish early on, and then the carpet got pulled out from under him, and it was super depressing to watch. But
Well, it wasn't made easier by the fact that Dan Miragliotta clearly wanted Walt Harris to succeed by just letting the beating go on and on and on and on. It was so hard to watch.
yeah, that was not a fun one at all.
All right. Well, that breaks down this upcoming card. So if you are a betting man, place your bets, and we will be back next week to discuss the outcome from this one, as well as next week's big fights. All right.